Hey guys, this is just going to be something a little bit different. What I'm going to be doing is I'm sort of quite conscious that it takes me quite a long time to write a story and release it. So what I'm going to do is just take this opportunity to talk through the stories that I've written, really, and almost, I don't know, I suppose like a director's commentary, if you like. So what we would have is I'm going to run the story on YouTube, have it up in the corner here somewhere, and just chat through what I was trying to achieve when I was writing it and how I went about it. And just sort of, interestingly, I wrote a bit on writing Hans and Laurie's story, and I found it quite interesting. And it's quite interesting for me as a writer to have sort of like to tell people what I'm trying to achieve by the writing, and to find out if that is actually coming across or if it's not, and to find out what people's opinions are, or if I miss the mark somehow, it'd be nice to sort of say, hey, no, you were trying to sort of achieve this and it really didn't work. So I guess this is just a way of me putting out a little bit of extra content, if you like, but also sort of just having a look back, really, and trying to see how it all went. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run the video. I've got my earphone and I'm going to listen to it. And as it goes on, I'm going to try and talk through what I was trying to do, writing wise. Starting off with Happy Trails Horror, the remastered version, which isn't the best one to talk about because it was pretty straightforward run through gameplay. The first one I wrote, and it's interesting how it then connects onto everything else. So I'll try and pick out some key moments and see what's happening. So I'm going to start it running now. And we start off with what we got. Oh yes, the warning. It contains graphic violence. Not really. A bit dramatic, I think. Don't think I needed that. Don't put that in the future.
Happy Trails. Counselors wanted.
So the introduction just starts off.
Make new friends. That's what the
and
like
what I've got here is just a turn of a sheet of what happened on each turn. I've got no idea who's what,
5'10",
what's happening, or anything really at this point. So when we get to the next bit, I'm going to start sort of popping the characters in. I thought, hey, it's a good idea. I'm just going to start saying, for myself, these guys, what are they doing? Where are they? So, we'll come in a second.
Of course, everyone had heard the stories about Hans the Butcher. The hulking giant wearing a metal pig mask and stalking the camp, murdering the kids and counsellors. Peter even half terrified some of the kids with a story around the campfire.
Yeah, so we're sort of establishing the fact that it's a
obviously based on those
Friday the 13th inspired rip-off.
So obvious.
Friday the 13th inspired story. Those stupid 80s stories.
Would never forget.
And then we sort of just bring in the characters. And as I'm writing this, I'm sort of thinking, okay, we've got two guys at this location. What are they doing? What are these guys doing? So we've got Lou and Andrea.
The job of cleaning the boats at the docks, and poor Johnny was waiting patiently for Becca.
Two guys, Dick and Susie.
Becca, of course, had
Johnny comes in.
She thought it would be funny to leave Johnny there
as part of this. Plot's already developing here because I've got Johnny waiting at make-out point for Becca, who's in the top sort of right-hand corner, who's going to meet Pete at the fire pit. So I've already sort of establishing the fact what's going on. Two guys in the cabin. I didn't know who they were at this point when I was writing them. And then we get into the meat of the story where it starts off.
Call like no other she had heard.
That's
muffled and
a frightening call.
Primal. What on earth was that? Laurie muttered
what
to
on
herself.
Earth was that?
A chill fell over her. Something was wrong.
What the hell was that?
Should have been better. Here. She picked up the pace, stumbling over a
tree root. That's interesting because when you first start off writing, you sort of go, "Oh yes, I played walk, and obviously I must have failed walk." So what we did, we stumbled over a tree root and hurt myself. And that goes out the window pretty quickly, really, because you can't keep up sort of like every action that you're doing. And I think this one I focused more on the actual actions I was taking than I did any other story. So we get to Steve. Laurie, you can't save us.
No one can.
Which is the first terror card, and sets the tone quite nicely for the rest of the story involving Steve. The rest of the story involving the whole thing, really, the 3 episodes. So he scatters twice, right to the exit. Could have scattered anywhere really. If he had scattered in a different direction, I'd have probably, he could have ended up being heroic. He could have scattered twice towards the cabins. Or, I've got to go save the kids, Laurie, and Laurie runs after him. He's a hero. He scattered to the exit, so automatically he becomes a bit of a dick.
At least now I can walk properly.
And I wanted to make Steve a little bit of a dick. So I sort of like, all of a sudden, when we get to him in a second, all of a sudden he'll be blaming Laurie for what's going on. He scatters to the exit. I needed to put something in there to stop him getting out. So the gates are locked. Oh, it's Laurie's fault. I hate you. What am I doing here? And I tried to sort of make him a bit sweary because
Steve ran, not looking back.
I wanted people not to like him. So this is where the first sort of narrative device, I suppose, I tried to use comes in. So I was trying to make him horrible, really. And he starts talking about himself in the third person, which is obviously a dick move to do.
The gates were locked.
Oh, gates were locked. I needed a reason why he can't get out, because if you just run to the service entrance, obviously game-wise he can't get out, so I need to get him out.
Momentarily he thought about going back for Laurie, telling her he was sorry for running.
But there you go.
Convincing her to let him out. She'd listened to him.
But no,
she loved him.
We really wanted. I'm really trying to sort of like make Steve into a real sort of coward here. So like he's not going back for Laurie. No, it's her fault.
That's what I need.
What he's going to do is going to hide. Going to hide in an outhouse, which
somewhere safe.
I don't know. It's a tool shed, I suppose, in my mind when I wrote it. I guess it could be an outside toilet lavatory.
He ran to the outhouse, climbed inside,
and he goes in, and he locks the door. What a hero! We love you, Steve. You're going to die.
Johnny sat at make-out point and looked at his watch again.
Then what's happened here is we're sort of video's lagging a bit. Hans definitely moved one in the last turn, and he should have. It was a random movement, and he should have gone to Becca. And I re-rolled it, and he came towards the docks. And then he came out of nowhere, and he zooms over to make out point. But Becca got lucky there. This is partly why Becca sort of stuck in my head as a character. The other thing is the trope is she's the promiscuous one. Johnny's the sort of like, Johnny's the oddball, losery type. Not really loser, wrong word, but the oddball type character. Trying to put the tropes in from the old horror movies. And poor old Johnny. Oh, I quite like Johnny.
What the? Johnny
and we established a crucifix earring, which I sort of had to come back to later on. So it's the first kill. He came out of nowhere.
7 feet tall, his thick leathers butcher's apron stained with blood. On his face, a mask, an iron mask.
Only 2 kills in this. Well, 3 if you include Hans.
And behind that mask, the eyes, red eyes, eyes of the devil, eyes of.
So Johnny's like.
Hans had come out of nowhere.
Thought
of how impossible this was
raced
through Johnny's mind as Hans hauled his massive 50-pound sledgehammer high above his head and then arced it down.
And poor old Johnny's about to get smushed.
The sledgehammer connected to Johnny's head with a sickening cracking sound.
Sound effects are a bit.
Bone split.
They're alright.
They're not great. Johnny slumped to the floor like a
Johnny's
sack of
dead.
wet corn being thrown from
Sack
a
of
truck.
wet corn. I don't know where that reference came from. Someone on the Discord server. My original one was very English. It was a sack of coal
like a
thrown from a lorry or a truck. A lorry. So when I redid the sound, I rewrote it slightly.
Laurie heard the noise from across the lane.
Laurie's now sort of like, okay, something's bad's going on here.
Godly
I mean, so she's now heading to the dock.
She turned the corner,
at this point when I wrote it, I didn't know the 2 guys in the cabins were children. I suppose if I'd have known that they were children when I was writing it, I would have sent Laurie to fetch them first, because it would have made a little bit more sense. You would have gone and got her friend.
He's here.
But it's really,
it's
really kind of irrelevant.
That's BS.
Deke and Susie, just kind of throwaway characters, I suppose. Nothing really intentional here from what I was writing. Just the fact that they were people, and they don't believe Laurie what she's doing, what's going on. So we're just sitting there saying, okay, look, I need a narrative to rescue them.
Maybe we should get out of here. Where's Steve?
Deke's a little bit more rational.
Left me.
Steve ran. I hate Steve. He hates him.
He's on his own now. We have to go.
We don't know Steve by this point.
As Susie opened her mouth to respond, Laurie grabbed her hand, dragging her behind as she headed to the dirt road out of the camp. Deke hurried behind.
Get out of here, you guys.
Right, get out.
And this sort of all becomes a little bit more confused as we get to
Susie looked at Laurie.
The second and third, well, certainly the third part of the trilogy. It's the way you look back on this and you go, that don't make any sense. But I wasn't writing for the third part when I was writing this.
No, Susie.
So
you and Deke get help.
I'll come to that when if I do one of these for the third part.
I can outrun Hans. You know I can.
Okay, I can outrun Hans. He's slow. He's going to be a pig mask.
Or at least try to. Okay,
I thought when I wrote this, I thought her backstory was that she was going
If
an
that thing she saw
Olympic
was
level
hands,
archer.
then he was
Turns out I
huge.
just made that up
There was
completely.
no way she could take him down with her bare hands.
So we
She
nip back
needed
to
a
the
weapon.
docks, and we're obviously
Maybe
going to
there was
have a
one
little
there.
look round for a weapon.
What a mess, she thought, arriving at the
And
dock.
because
You two didn't
always
get
handy to have a
screaming
weapon
down
when
here.
you're fighting hands.
Okay, let's focus a little. What do we have?
Let's focus a
Rummaging
little.
through
Yeah,
the piles on
let's
the
get
dock,
in
Laurie
those
noticed a hand-drawn old
action
map.
cards.
Maybe one of the props from the treasure hunt they rang the other day.
Treasure hunt
Okay,
is the
an archery
setup.
bow at the cabins.
Nice.
She knew
Worked
that
well.
already. First aid kit at the utility shed, and an aluminium bat
Map,
here,
obviously.
somewhere. That'll come in handy. But where
So
was
I
the
knew the
bat?
aluminium bat was here, so we'll have a little sort of. Obviously, just did quite a lot of searching here at this stage.
Subconsciously hanging it round her neck, she continued.
Found a whistle, and this is where I cheat again, and Becca
Just about
gets
to
lucky
leave,
again,
Laurie
which makes
glanced over
Becca
to the
sort of
boathouse
even
entrance,
more
and her eyes were attracted
stand
to the
out.
reflection of moonlight on metal.
And what I had to do is just while we're sort of like running through the search, what I had to do with Becca, she was obviously going to meet Pete at the fire pit, stitching up poor Johnny, which made her sort of like an ideal candidate to be killed, sort of horror trope wise. We need to knock off the promiscuous girl who's horrible to everybody. But she survived, so I had to sort of go back and imply that she'd actually stood Pete up and was going to meet Johnny instead, which makes her a little bit more likeable, I would think, from the audience point of view.
Lorry burst through the trees for fire.
I think that was something. This is obviously sort of like, oh, there's something coming through the trees. No, it's Laurie.
You look like crap. What's with
And then we
that?
get the whole sort of like, you know,
Look, Pete,
we are
we have to go. You heard that noise, right?
going.
Yeah,
This
well,
guy's the jock.
well,
He's a bit of a dickhead as
no,
well. It's a shame
it's
he didn't
Hans.
die, but
He's
there you
here.
go.
Oh, fuck you, weird.
So we make him swear again because I don't particularly like him
Have
as
you
a
know
character.
Becca will be here any minute.
And,
Ain't that big man
you
gonna be
know,
dragging me away from that. Now do want
he's,
to find a
obviously
widow boyfriend. Stop trying to spoil my
waiting
fun.
for Becca, but I tried to make it so when we get to the scene in a minute, we'll see that Becca was rounding the corner to make out Point, which I tried to use to imply that she'd actually changed her mind and gone to meet Johnny at Makeout Point rather than Pete at the fire pit, which sort of made her a little bit more redeemable as a character because she didn't die really. So I don't know if that works or not. I really don't.
Silently listening. The crumpled body of Johnny
And a lot of this
rises to
writing
his
is just to get the
blood dripped slowly from the iron tilts.
tarot cards in, I think,
Each
really.
drop glistening in the moonlight as it fell to the floor. He was hungry. He was always hungry. That's why Mommy gave him the mask, to stop him eating. But it didn't stop him. It couldn't stop him. Nothing could.
This is the
Always hungry. Always feasting. A dark feast.
Dark Feast. Must have been a tarot card, I think. I should have a tarot
Rage
card.
filled his
So
eyes as he looked round searching for the source of the
and we've got sort of a bit of, you can hear the whistle in the background there, so this is sort of simultaneously happening. The sound effects really help with this, I think,
Laurie's mind
once you
was
sort of put them
racing.
in, because obviously you've got
As Pete headed to town thinking that he was going
Pete's
to meet Becca,
gone.
Laurie sprinted to the
So
utility
when
shed.
Laurie blows the whistle, that's
She knew Lord
simultaneously
Andrew
with
would be
what's happening
there.
here.
Two girls had been
This I
insisting
cheated on,
that
I'm sure,
there
and which would have put Becca in even more jeopardy again, because I think I broke a move. I think I had a sprint action with 2 and a 1, and I used 2, then used the whistle, then used my further 1, which I don't think I can do. So
And the two kids left at the cabin.
Becca would have been dead. This is why Becca stuck in my head as a character
She raced past the dock.
and came back in
She stumbled. The whistle round her neck
episode
flipped
3,
and
because
caught
she
her.
essentially should have been dead, and she caused me a lot of trouble to go back and sort of like just put little nuances in, trying to make her more redeemable. When I first wrote her, she was just literally somebody who was going to, there you go, that's the whistle that Hans just heard. And I had to rewrite it again when I got to the end of it, because, oh look, you see the little shadow, hands casting on the characters there. I had to rewrite it again slightly, because when I first wrote this, when I got to the end, I didn't realise the ending was going to be as it is right at the end, but I had to rewrite this so that none of those characters saw Hans. They didn't need to turn to see the figure. They sort of like just followed Laurie, because if any of those had seen Hans, it would have made the ending make no sense whatsoever. So it's sort of, this is where the editing comes in, sort of come back and write it. And again here, what I'm trying to do with Becca is just sort of try and make her a little bit more of a likeable character. She's upset, so she's upset, and you know, and what have you. So that's just me trying to make it as though Becca was a more likeable character,
Time to finish things.
which is why
Laurie ducked into the docks as Hans
she's stuck
rounded
in my
the
head. I
corner.
think she caused me trouble. I had to
Sledgehammer leaving a
rewrite
bloody
just
trail
little.
behind
There's
as
like
he
literally a
dragged
sentence
the
every now and then,
Creeping into the
making her
shadows,
do
Laurie
different things or
holding
whatever.
her breath.
And this is quite a nice moment in the story. So Laurie's gone back to the dock. Hans has obviously pulled a tarot card that moves him past Laurie. And I like this bit, because that's a nice, and this is one that I actually had to write in because of the tarot cards. Taking a souvenir, I had to go back and give Johnny an earring, so that then Laurie recognises the fact that Johnny's ear or whatever it is attached to his belt because of the earring, so he's taken souvenirs. So that was directly written because of the Terrified. Oh, I love this game. It just gives you those little things. You go, oh, how does this happen? And when you're actually sort of like writing it, you do this in your head when you're playing it. Oh, a lot of people do, and I certainly do. If I'm just playing a game, I go, oh, what's this person doing there? What's that person doing there? When you're writing, you have to really go back and sort of like, you can really pick details out. Going, oh, he's taking souvenirs. What's a souvenir? Is an ear. Why is it? How do we know it's an ear? Oh, because it's got an earring. So you really sort of go back and really sort of got to go back and find little things and tie them together. It's really good. I really enjoy doing that kind of thing. And then we're back to Steve, who's talking to himself again. This reminds me of Hicks. Game over, man. No fucking way. Some real pretty shit now. So we're back to Steve, who's talking to himself in the third person again because he's a knob. And this is probably the most brutal kill I wrote in any of the 4 stories I've written, and I wanted it to be horrible. And I don't know if it went far enough or too far, or it's difficult because I wanted this to be horrible and sort of like, he's just going to the door, he's going to the door, I'm just going to open the door, and then all of a sudden, wham!
Nothing. All clear.
We're going.
Just reach for the door.
Just reach for the door, and
his hand went out. It was inches from the door when the sledgehammer crashing.
There you go. Oh, you're in shit now, Steve. I wanted that to be a bit Jurassic Parky, with the T-Rex coming in, with the lawyer sitting on the lavatory, and the sort of like T-Rex bursts through, and he tries to flail about. He hits Hans, which pisses Hans off, and I got bits of wood going into the eye, and this horrific hammer rush. Terracardin again worked well, and it's sort of like going smack, smack, smack.
His one good eye streaming tears of fear and pain.
We're not trying to kill Steve gently. We're just like literally pummeling him to the pieces as much as we can.
Hans bellowed, threw the hammer aside and lifted the broken but still conscious body of Steve 4 feet into the air. Bitch, Steve thought.
And he's still a knob, even when he's dying. He still blames Laurie for it. That tears his arm off at the end. Splat.
Crumpled and broken. Hans stood, looking down at the body of Steve for a moment.
And then this is something that I'm not sure worked narratively wise, because I've already sort of established that the 2 guys in the top are young children.
It's 3 a.m. in the morning when the twins.
And this is we sort of like just switching to them.
Being allowed to stay
and what I wanted to do was create a little. Because I knew obviously at this point that the game. The finale was revealed, obviously ran out Terracors just as Hans got to outside the cabins, and then he comes after Laurie. So those guys are literally seconds away from being killed when he goes back for Laurie. So I wanted to sort of like try and create a bit of jeopardy here and then redeem him. But I don't think, I'm not sure that it worked in as much as that they're 8-year-old twins and would this kind of horror story have your Hans character, your Friday the 13th Jason character, or whoever killing children that young? Probably not.
Looking over at Billy, Charlie could see that her sister was about to scream.
But I like Charlie. They could have come back as other characters, or Charlie and Billy, who were specifically named as either boys or girls when I started the story, and they turned out to be a pair of girls.
It's coming for us. Charlie had seen it. A shape bigger than anything she'd ever seen before. Horrible and terrifying. Shh.
And then we get to which is the
twins silently slipped off the rickety
turned out to be a massive pivotal moment in the entire trilogy, which is Laurie at the dock feeling guilty because she didn't go to the cabins to rescue the 2 twins there. She cut gameplay wise. I can't get anything about that. I'm like 4 or 5 spaces away. I can't get there. Can't do anything. We had the tarot card earlier. He wants me. He always wanted me. So I'm sort of thinking, how do I play on that a little bit, and how do I sort of say, okay, she knows that Hans wants him, so maybe she just sort of like calls out with her mind and says, "Come and get me, come and get me." And Hans is like just about to go in there and smush the children. He goes, "No, I'm going after that other girl because she's calling into my mind." And that is basically the crux of the trilogy, and how it ends up is based on this tiny bit of writing here, which is like a really poor way of, I couldn't think of her, like, Laurie needs to make her the hero, but she's not going to be a hero if 2 kids get killed. So how does she save them? And so it's a really weak story point as she calls the hand in his head. Yeah, it makes no sense. I mean, it's an 80s horror movie. It doesn't have to make any sense. But that is something that when I got to the Maple Lane and the ending of that, I was like, oh, how does this? It just sort of tends to make a little bit more sense. No, it was her.
Rage like he'd never felt before. A dark obsession.
So Laurie has called the hands, and if we go back again to the very, very ending,
death blow.
There's all kinds of connotations that could be put back to this first story.
Tears of fear, tears of relief.
Oh, and the twins are safe. I don't think anybody would expect them to be killed.
He was coming. She knew it.
And then we get to the final fight scene. And this is something I don't know works. I changed the music up for the finale. The finale fight goes a little bit sort of more. I use sort of drum track. And I've done this for certainly started using music in the second one, more in Storybook Woods, and then came back to this one to do the music again and sound effects and what have you. And I used the drum tracks for the finale. I love the drum tracks. I think they work quite well. I'm not sure. And I don't know again if this finale is detailed enough for a finale, but yeah, I think it's alright. I think it's okay. I think it's work. I quite like this story. Very simple. There's no real complications in it until we get to the end. But actually, when I listen to this back, I quite enjoy this. I think it's I think it's better than the Maple Lane story. And I think it works quite well as a simple. It's horror. Is it horror? Yeah. Well, I guess it's horror theme. It's quite actiony as well. That certainly with this music at the end, I think it helps sort of signify the finale. The narration gets really fast here as well. I'm not sure if that's too quick or not. Don't know.
But the blow was too fast. Too powerful.
That was too fast.
The overhead swing of the hammer hit Laurie square on the chest. She felt her bones breaking inside as she fell to the floor, her body finally giving out.
And then obviously, Hans, that was a brutal combination of terror. I have to go back and listen to a finale and Dark Power cards. It gave him a lot of attacks, as I remember. And luckily we had a reviving health token, otherwise this would have been the end of the Hans trilogy at the end of episode 1. We'd have moved on to something else. But we revived.
Pain was intense, her body screaming with an agony
we got up,
that could not be imagined.
And we smushed Hans with baseball bat. Broken baseball bat at this point.
His back turned.
I don't think it doesn't break in game terms.
Saw the bat, broken in two.
We'll see.
Its jagged edges of aluminium splintering out. She had to.
And again, I tried to write in was it a close call? And I don't think I need to do that. That's just a little bit too over the top. She dropped it. It's a close call. Yeah, I don't tend to do that anymore. And I think I've moved away from sort of like the action cards completely. In fact, by the time I got to the third one, I couldn't even get the terror cards in because they're all, works for this one because it's the first time you've heard it. When you've pulled he always wants me 5 times in 3 stories or 3 times or 4 times or whatever. It's sort of like, yeah, you can't really keep doing that, I don't think. We're back up. Fast narration again.
As Hans slumped in front of Laurie, howling at the pain of his severed tendon, she lifted the broken back high above her head and brought it stabbing down into the unprotected base of his neck with such strength that it severed his spinal column. Critical.
Straight in the back of the neck.
With
critical blow, you see? Critical blow. Critical blow.
Slats of Doc, Hans slumped from his knees to the floor with a hollow thud. Laurie looked at the lifeless body momentarily before collapsing to the floor beside it.
But obviously, his hands. He can't be dead.
Wailing of sirens in the distance as the dawn started to break. It was 2 weeks later when Laurie opened. And
then with a little epilogue, back in the hotel, back in the hospital, and this came to me as I wrote it because you sort of get to the end and you sort of think, yeah, okay, the police turn up. There's a load of people dead. There's a girl covered in blood at the docks. There's no sign of the massive, unstoppable killer that no one else saw. I made sure of that. I had to go back. No one else saw, and they go, yeah, okay, yeah, no problem. Don't worry about that. Yep. No, you're prime suspect, Miss Carpenter, and we're not going to make sure you go to jail, even if you're not guilty.
They want to see you, and after that, get some rest.
There's Officer Cop, who obviously is a recurring character all the way through.
I'm sorry, Miss Carpenter. What was that?
In one way, shape, or form. Officer Cop, stolen from Maple Lane, but not necessarily the Maple Lane Officer Cop. Could be no relation, or cousin, sister, whatever you like. There's no body.
1 year later.
And then we just throw in the epilogue. Ryko coming in, setting up another story. And this is where we sort of say, no, they found Laurie guilty and they sent her to Wolf Horror, setting up the final story. And yeah, I guess I wanted to. Did I want to set it up at the time? Yeah, I think so. I didn't know if I was going to write a second one or not, but I thought it was quite a nice idea to be able to put that in there. And it just sort of was the basis for developing the entire trilogy. And it's interesting, I think, how this all sort of formed into the entire trilogy. So like I said, I wrote that as a standalone piece. There was set up a sequel, if you like, but I had no idea what was going to happen at the end of the second one, Horror on Maple Lane, until I actually wrote the words then. And I had no idea what was going to happen at the end of the third one until sort of running up to that, because you're sort of tossing ideas about in my head of how the story could progress, and I had the idea of what happened to Laurie there in the back of my head, and then when you play the game it just sort of fits in, so that's quite interesting. Anyway, that's going to be it from me on this. Hopefully that might not have been interesting. As I say, it's just a little bit more content, so gotcha.